Right here you can see I have created some of these templates using the container. So in this video I am going to tell you how you can create these kind of templates using the container. So you might be aware with the columns and the sections approach that Elementor had like a few months ago, and then they switched to the containers. So here you can see this is like a very basic 3-column structure layout I created using the container. So this one is actually very simple, and in order to create this kind of structure, what you actually want to do is to get one container. So click on plus icon and then click on plus. So here you will get these kind of templates that comes with Elementor already, but I'm not going to choose these pre-made templates. We are going to create these templates by ourselves. So let's just take this templates for the container that has direction of row. So I'll take this direction row container. Now what I actually want to do is to throw in a container, an additional container there. So if I open the navigator here, inside the navigator you can see this is the parent container and this is the child container that I just imported there. So in the child container, if you want to create this kind of layout, what you actually want to do is to first of all change its content width to the full width, and once you will change it to full width you will have this value 100%. So reduce this value to 33%. Here we have the 33%. Now what I actually want to do is to duplicate these things here so that we'll have same kind of template there. Now here you can see we have this 3-column layout here, but if I'll go to this first child container and if I go to the style tab and if I add a background color, here you can see we have exactly same layout. So we have the exact same layout that I have created at the top. So in this way you can create any of these kind of template very easily using the direction row property of the containers itself. Here you can see the direction is row and nothing else that I have selected is selected. Here it is just the direction row applying right here. Now let's suppose you are using the cards on your website and you have the 6 cards that you want to display inside one container. Now look at this. If I duplicate this one, you can see all of these containers are actually coming next to each other. That is not what we actually want in general scenarios. So what we actually need is that we need to have 3 containers in first row and then we want to have other 3 containers in the second row. So in order to do that, what you actually want to do is to go to the parent container. Here you can see this is the parent container. So in the parent container, here you will see this option wrap. So click on this wrap option, and as soon as you will click on wrap, everything will be wrapped in 2 rows. And this is that simple. Now for example, you want to have 2 containers in the first row and then 2 containers in the second row and 2 containers in the third row. Now in order to do that, what you actually want to do is to click on the second container that you have and change its width to 50% and do the same thing with the first container. I'll change its width to the 50%. Now both of these child container have a width of 50% and a 50%, but they are not stacking next to each other. And there's an explanation for that. Look at this gap. So we have a gap of 20 pixels. Now we have applied a value of 50% and the 50%. That is actually 100%. But you need to add this 20 pixels in this total amount. So we have actually a value higher than 100%. So what you actually need to do is to reduce your width like 1%, and then they will stack next to each other. You will have to apply the same concept when you are using the wrap property in the container. So in this container, I'll change the width of this to, let's say, 69%. That is actually near to 70%. Now I actually want to change this one to 30%. So this one I made it 70%, reduced it minus 1%. Now it is 69%, and this one is 30% minus 1%, 29%. So this one right here, you can see this is now stacking next to each other. Now I want to apply the same concept here. So I'll let you do the calculations here. I'll change the value there I'll make it 29% and guess what will be the value for this container. If you guessed 69%, then congratulations, you are right, and you are already started to understand how container works. So in this way you can create this kind of stackable container, and you don't actually need to create this layout by following a process like this. Like you will create a choose a parent container and select a template from there, and then you will again duplicate this and duplicate this, and this is actually not an optimal approach for the containers. So with the containers you need to control your DOM sizes, that is the number of elements that you will use inside of your page builder. For now we are using Elementor. So for now I have showed you how you can create this template and how you can use the wrap property within the container, and I already explained you how you can do this kind of layout right here. So 50% and the 50% property here. Now for example, you for one of these containers you want to have 100% width. So for the 100% width you can simply add 100% and it will take the 100% of the width. And if you want to duplicate this one again, you can duplicate this again, and then you can modify the width however you want, and it will inherit the width that you will select here. So in this way you can create this full width container that you are seeing here. Now here is another thing. So for example, in some of these scenarios you want to have your containers from left to right side, taking the full screen of your monitor. So in order to do that, what you actually want to do is to select your parent container, and right here you will see this option content width, and for now it is boxed. Change it to full width, and as soon as you will change it to full width, now you can see our container is spreading on the both sides of the screen. Now by default Elementor has some padding, so if you will remove this padding, now if you look at it, it should be on the both side of the screen. So I don't have an element here, so let's just add a spacer and give it some height. And now if you look at it, here you can see now our container is taking the entire screen space. So in this way you can create the full width containers as well. All right, next up we have this kind of structure. It might look complex, but this one is actually not as complex as it is looking. So let's just try recreating this structure using the containers. So what I actually want to do is to create one container that we take. So I'll take this direction row container, and inside of this direction row container, what I want to do is to select one child container, and once again I'll go to the width and change its width to 100%. Now once again I'll give it a width of 32%, and then I'll duplicate these here so that we'll have 3 containers right there. I'm not going to give it a background color here because we are going to have some element inside of this container. So let's just insert one more child container here. So now we have a parent container. So now we have a parent container, then we have a child container, and then we have a child inside the child. So consider like we have a section, a column, and an inner column. It is just like that. So now what I want to do is to give it a background color. So let's just give it a background color so that we can recognize what we are doing. So I'll go to this child container, first child container, and I'll remove any padding that we have. So here I removed the padding, that's all. Now I'll go back to the child container, and if I duplicate this container, you can see this is now stacking below the first container. Now you can see everything is stacking below the first container. But if you remember, we select the direction row for our container that we added very first time. That is because our parent container have a property of direction row. But if we'll go to the child container, and if we'll go to the layout, here you can see we doesn't have any direction selected. So if you will change the direction to horizontal, now you can see everything is stacking next to each other. If you will change the direction to vertical, now everything is in vertical direction. If you want to change the direction to reverse, so let's just give it a different color. So I'll give it a different color. Now it has a different color. I'll go to this child container, and if I'll choose column reversed, now you can see this column is reversed. So this is how everything works with container. So I'll just give it the same background color that we are using. So if we look at the top, we have this big container that have larger height than the other two containers. So we are going to do the same thing here. So I'll select this child container, the first child and child container, and I'll go to this layout tab and I'll give it a height, minimum height of 200 pixels. So now you can see this is how it is looking. So in the next container that we have, what I actually want to do is to simply copy these containers here. I'll copy this child container from there, and then I'll paste this container right here. Now I once again want to copy this container, and I'll paste this container right here. So now you can see how this layout is now coming together. You don't have any limitations on how many containers you can bring inside of a container. This is completely your choice how many containers you want inside a container. That is totally up to you. So I'll just add this larger container here, and now you can see we have kind of like the similar layout that I have created at the top. So I'll just remove the padding, and now you can see this is how it is looking. So in this way you can create some of these complex containers, complex layouts that you are seeing right here. Now for now we have I have these containers for these layouts. So let's say you want to create these layouts using the elements, and you don't and for that scenario you don't actually need to use this many containers, because right now we have a parent container. So if I look at here, I have a parent container, then I have a 3 child containers under the parent container, just like this. One parent container, 3 child container, and under the each child container, once again we have 3 child container. So this is something that you don't actually want to do. So how you will handle this thing in the real-time project? So let's just delete some of these things from there, and let me just throw in a text module here. So in the text module, for example, for the very first container, I had the height of 200 pixels. So I'll go to this text module here. I want to give it a color. So I'll give it a color, and then I'll go to the advanced tab, and then I'll go to the background. Now I'll go to the classic, and I want to give it a background color so that we can see what we are actually doing. Let's just give it a padding quickly. So 20 pixel padding, and still you can see these both are not the same. Now in order to make the height equal, what I'll do is to add a little line of CSS. So I'll add the selector to select this, and then I wanna add a minimum height of 200 pixels. And as soon as I add a minimum height of 200 pixels, you can see the minimum height has been applied to this element right here. And next up we have these containers right here. So for example, if I duplicate this element from here, and if I go there once again in the custom CSS, and if I change the value to 100 px, now we have a minimum height of 100 px. Let's just change it to the paragraph, and now you can see we have a paragraph here. So let me just copy this thing here a couple of times so that we'll have some content in here. So let's just duplicate this one again, and here you can see this is how it is looking. So there are multiple ways to work around these things, and you are completely free to try all of those ways. You can use your own creativity to think about complex structures that you can use inside of Elementor. But for now, I'm just showing you how you can use some of these layouts inside of Elementor. I'm just copying and pasting, actually doing the same thing that we did before. Paste. All right, so here you can see this is how it is looking. You can definitely change these text with the images, but for the images you will actually have to go to the image gallery, and then you will have to um, restructure those images. So here, if I remove this thing from there, you can see this is how it is looking. So it is completely up to you, however you want to use the containers. Next up, we have this kind of layout. So in order to create this kind of layout, this one is actually not very difficult as well. So as I showed you this time, what I actually want to do is to select this pre-made structure that we have to just save a step. So I have selected this one parent container, and now by default we have these two child containers inside the parent container. Now in order to create this kind of container, you can add one child container here, and then you can go to full width, and then you can define a width. So for example, I want to give it a 80% width, and I'll go to the style tab and I'll give it a background color. Now I want to duplicate this one, and this time I want to give it a 20% width, but they both are not stacking next to each other. Once again, the reason is because of the column gap or the row gap that we have by default between the elements. So you will have to reduce the percentage to 1% on both of these containers, and then they should stack next to each other. Okay, in some of these situations you will have to adjust these values more, and then what you want to do is to go to this parent container that you have, and then you want to select wrap so that they should wrap next to each other. Now if I reduce these values again, you can see they both are not stacking. That is because I have this direction as vertical. I want to change the direction to horizontal, and as soon as I change the direction to horizontal, you can see they both are stacking now. So I'll change it back to 69%, and then for this one I want to change it back to 29%, or yeah, 27% value. Here it comes. All right, so for this big container, what I want to do is to duplicate this one, and now I want to give it a width of 100%. In this way you can create these kind of containers as well. There I only have applied a width. You can apply a width here, a minimum, I applied the height. You can apply any height here. So give your containers a height, and they'll inherit the height that you will have. So I give it a 50 pixels. You can give it like 150 to both of these, and now you have this kind of layout. And here I just flipped the container, and that's all. Next up, we have this kind of layout in the container, and I think by now you should be able to visualize how all of these are stacking next to each other and how this one is created. But let me just quickly show you how you can create this kind of layout. So in order to create this kind of layout, I'll select one container that have the direction of a row, and once I'll choose this container, I want to insert one child container here, and then I want to give it a full width, and then after that I want to give it 33%. I'll choose the parent container, and I'll ensure that I have the direction row horizontal, and then I want to give it a background color. So just give it a background color. Here we have the background color. So let's just duplicate this, and this time I don't want to give it like that much amount, so let's just give it 15%. Let's just duplicate this, and let's just reduce the value of this first container like 25. Probably let's just give it 30% here, and then I'll copy this and I'll paste the container here, and now we have this container appearing right there. I'll increase the value here, and now I want to duplicate this container again, and now you can see they are all stacking next to each other. That is because I haven't enabled the wrap property here. So you'll have to enable the wrap property, and as soon as you will enable wrap, all of these containers that have width applied will have the widths associated to these containers. And then for this last container, I want to give it a width of 100%, and in this way you will have this kind of layout. So I hope you have learned something new way around of these containers. If you have learned something new about these containers, be sure to hit the subscribe button and be sure to hit the bell icon to always get the latest video updates. Thank you very much. I'll see you in the next video.